Welcome in. Yes, I am talking directly to you.
Glad to have you here with us.
We have a really custom-tailored deep dive lined up for you today.
We certainly do.
We're taking a stack of your sources specifically, a highly comprehensive Wikipedia biography, and we're extracting the most critical insights from it.
Getting right to the good stuff.
Exactly. Today, we are unpacking the astonishing, intensely focused life of William Eugene Johnson.
Though history remembers him by a much more, I guess, cinematic name.
Oh, absolutely. History knows him as Pussyfoot Johnson.
Right, which sounds like a character straight out of a noir film.
It really does.
But the historical footprint he left behind is entirely real.
It is. The mission of this deep dive is to explore how this single individual utilized stealth, early forms of espionage, and just relentless persistence to shape the American Prohibition movement.
He was a true pioneer of pressure politics.
And just to give you a quick tease of the ground we're covering today,
Prepare yourself.
Johnson was a lawman who had a $3,000 bounty put on his head. He effectively weaponized the concept of catfishing to dismantle his political rivals decades before the internet even existed.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it.
Totally. He lost an eye to a rioting mob in London, and he even inspired a famous beverage.
Setting the stage here, we are looking closely at the wet versus dry era of the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Right, the whole prohibition debate.
Exactly. But looking back at the source material, our goal isn't to relitigate the politics of that era.
No, not at all.
We aren't taking sides on the wet versus dry issue. Rather, we're here to examine the birth of aggressive pressure campaigns.
The mechanics of it.
Yes, the mechanics. Johnson's life provides this incredibly detailed blueprint of how a dedicated individual could manipulate information, public opinion, and law enforcement to force societal change. It is, frankly, a masterclass in tactical persistence.
A masterclass that started surprisingly quietly, actually.
It usually does.
So William Eugene Johnson was born on March 25, 1862 in Coventry, New York.
Okay.
But he eventually headed west, seeking an education at the University of Nebraska.
Moving out to the frontier, essentially.
Right. And after his college years, he set down roots in Lincoln, Nebraska. He took a job working at the Lincoln Daily News.
A newspaper man?
Yeah, and he proved adept enough to work his way up to become the manager of the Nebraska News Bureau.
That's a big deal.
It was. It was also during this period in Lincoln that his personal life took shape. He met his first wife, Lily M. Trevitt, and they were married in 1886.
That background in news management is the vital key to understanding everything he does later.
How so?
Well, a newsroom in the 1880s was an intelligence-gathering hub. Managing a news bureau requires a person to cultivate sources, verify rumors, and understand exactly how information flows through a community.
Ah, I see.
Johnson learned very early on that whoever controls the information controls the narrative. He also learned the value of observing quietly from the background.
Okay, let's unpack this because that quiet observation directly led to his legendary nickname.
The Pussyfoot moniker.
Yes. So a bit later in his career, he found himself working as a law enforcement officer down in the Oklahoma Territory.
Rough place back then.
Very rough. He was tasked with pursuing suspects, and he approached this job with such intense, calculated stealth that the local newspapers in Muskogee started calling him the gent with the panther tread.
The gent with the panther tread. That is incredibly poetic.
It is. And that poetic description eventually morphed into the shorthand nickname Pussyfoot.
Makes sense.
But the crazy part is how he achieved that silent approach. He later revealed his secret.
What did he do?
He went so far as to cobble rubber onto the heels of his shoes.
No way.
Yeah, literally so he could stalk his targets without making a single sound.
What's fascinating here is how he translated an intellectual skill gathering facts without alerting the subject into a physical tactical advantage.
Right.
Adding rubber heels to sneak up on suspects is investigative reporting taken to a physical extreme. He was treating law enforcement like an undercover journalistic assignment.
And that stealthy persona became culturally iconic.
Oh, definitely.
Fast forward a bit to 1920, and a bartender named Robert Vermeer, working at the Embassy Club in London, actually invented a non-alcoholic drink and named it the Pussyfoot in his honor.
A mocktail.
Lasting mocktail legacy, which is just a fantastic piece of trivia.
It is, and it demonstrates how far his reputation had spread.
Worldwide.
Exactly. But to understand how a former Nebraska news manager becomes an internationally recognized figure, we need to examine the psychological warfare he started developing back in the Midwest.
Right. Let's look at 1889. Nebraska is locked in a fierce debate over statewide prohibition.
Things are getting heated.
Very heated. And Johnson decides that simply arguing his position isn't moving the needle fast enough. So he goes undercover.
Taking the stealth to the next level.
He adopts the persona of an anti-prohibitionist.
Wait, he poses as his own enemy?
Yes, he infiltrates the inner circles of brewery and saloon owners, acting as a sympathetic ally, purely to extract their strategic secrets.
Wow.
And once he secured the inside information he needed, he published all of it to publicly damage the wet cause.
He was running a sophisticated double agent operation.
Pretty much.
And he was doing this entirely on his own initiative. He recognized that the most damaging blows to a political movement don't come from external arguments, but from internal leaks.
Exposing them from the inside.
Right. By publishing their secrets, he wasn't just exposing their strategies, he was eroding the trust within their own ranks.
And he refined this tactic even further. Later, when he moved to Kansas to work with the Anti-Saloon League, he orchestrated a brilliant, if ruthless, mail campaign.
What did he do this time?
He would write letters to prominent wet leaders, adopting a false identity.
Catfishing them.
Decades before the internet. He claimed to be a fellow brewer facing challenges from those pesky temperance activists, and he would ask them for their advice on how to defeat the movement.
Oh, that is devious.
These leaders, believing they were communicating in confidence with an industry peer, wrote back detailing their candid strategies and political maneuvers.
And let me guess.
Yep. Johnson took those replies and immediately published them.
Unbelievable.
He was publicly humiliating his opposition, using their own words.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a profound example of early information warfare. By manufacturing a scenario where his opponents felt safe enough to lower their guard, he acquired unguarded intelligence.
Exactly.
He understood that public embarrassment and the exposure of private political maneuvering could sway public opinion far more effectively than a standard debate. He was controlling the flow of information to shape the political environment.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This relentless, highly effective undercover work eventually caught the attention of the United States government.
They noticed his results.
They did. They recognized his tactical approach yielded immense results. So in 1906, he was appointed as a special agent for the Department of the Interior.
Moving up to federal enforcement.
His assignment was to enforce laws within the Indian Territory and Oklahoma. And the sheer volume of his output during this period is just difficult to wrap your head around.
The statistics from his time as a federal agent are staggering. Look at the numbers from July 1908 to September 1911.
He was operating as the chief agent of the United States Indian Service then.
Over that roughly 3-year stretch, Johnson successfully secured more than 4,400 convictions.
Over 4,000 convictions in roughly 3 years.
It's almost hard to believe.
Navigating the jurisdictional complexities of the Indian Territory in the early 1900s without modern communication or transport, it is an extraordinary logistical feat.
It is, and it requires us to understand his operational methodology.
Right, how did he actually do it?
You cannot secure that volume of convictions through isolated one-off arrests.
That would take decades.
Exactly. Our sources detail that he executed widespread synchronized crackdowns.
A completely different scale.
He targeted gambling saloons and other illicit establishments, not by arresting individuals, but by hitting entire networks at once. He would orchestrate coordinated strikes designed to dismantle the entire operational infrastructure of these businesses in a single evening.
But dismantling that infrastructure means you are completely destroying the livelihoods of the people running those establishments.
Oh, absolutely. They weren't going to take that quietly.
No, they didn't. The saloon keepers in the territory were losing everything to Johnson's synchronized raids, and they were furious. They'd pooled their resources and put a bounty on his head.
They wanted him gone.
They offered a $3,000 reward for his death.
To contextualize that figure for you, $3,000 at the turn of the 20th century was a monumental sum.
A fortune.
This was a highly lucrative, heavily funded assassination contract. The economic threat he posed to their operations was so severe that they viewed his elimination as a necessary business expense.
Most people, upon learning that a highly funded syndicate is actively paying for their assassination, would quietly resign and move out of state.
I know I would.
Right. But Johnson's response to the bounty was extraordinary. He didn't retreat.
He doubled down.
He simply adapted his strategy and escalated the conflict. He shifted his coordinated raids to the nighttime hours.
Becoming the Panther again.
Yes. And rather than just shutting the establishments down and resisting the operators, he escalated to property destruction. He completely leveled the establishments he raided.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you witness the rapid evolution of his tactics.
From journalism to destruction.
He transitioned from journalistic observation to psychological warfare, and then to aggressive militarized enforcement.
Yeah.
Using false identities and leaking correspondence are hallmarks of modern political sabotage. But responding to an assassination threat by escalating to the systemic destruction of property shows a level of insurgent commitment that is truly remarkable.
He wasn't playing around.
He viewed his enforcement duties through the lens of total war.
And while he eventually resigned from federal service, that sense of total commitment never waned. He merely shifted his battlefield.
Where did he go next?
Between 1912 and 1926, his organizational capacity was on full display as he served as the managing editor for 35 different anti-Saloon League publications.
Running 35 distinct publications simultaneously is an incredible administrative undertaking.
I can't even imagine.
He returned to his roots in the news business, but now he was operating a continent-wide syndicate of advocacy journalism, amplifying his message on an unprecedented scale.
He also recognized that the conversation was expanding far beyond North America. He stepped onto the global stage.
Taking it worldwide.
He served as a delegate to the International Anti-Alcoholic Congress in Milan in 1913, and later attended the 1926 Congress in Tartu.
He was moving in high-level diplomatic circles.
Yes, he was a member of the International Temperance Committee of 50 in Paris in 1919. He even crossed the Atlantic to become the manager and eventually the director of the London office of the World League Against Alcoholism.
Taking his campaign to Europe was a bold strategic move, but it exposed him to a completely different cultural dynamic.
Because Europe wasn't the Midwest.
Exactly. The tactics that worked in the American Midwest and the Oklahoma Territory met a deeply entrenched, historically rooted resistance abroad.
And that resistance turned exceptionally dangerous.
Real fast.
That brings us to November 13th, 1919. Johnson is in London, participating in a speaking engagement at Essex Hall.
Okay.
The environment there was highly charged, and the crowd turned violently against her.
A riot broke out.
Yes. A large mob, which our sources specifically identify as being comprised of medical students, stormed the event and captured him.
Captured him.
They forced him onto a stretcher and paraded him through the streets of London.
That is terrifying.
It was a chaotic, sustained assault, and the police ultimately had to intervene to rescue him from the crowd.
The involvement of medical students points to a specific British university tradition often referred to as ragging.
Ragging.
Yes. It was a form of public humiliation and hazing that frequently escalated into mob violence. But this wasn't just a rowdy student prank.
No.
It was a targeted physical suppression of his political speech, demonstrating a visceral public rejection of his movement.
The consequences of that ragging were tragic and permanent, by the way.
What happened?
During the chaos of being paraded through the streets, an unidentified individual in the crowd threw an object that struck Johnson directly in his right eye.
Oh, no.
The impact caused profound trauma. Despite medical intervention, physicians were entirely unable to repair the damage, and William Eugene Johnson permanently lost his sight in that eye.
It is a sobering testament to the physical perils of his international crusade.
Very sobering.
He was navigating environments where his advocacy provoked furious, uncontrollable public anger. And it highlights the stark contrast between his controlled, stealthy operations in Oklahoma and the unpredictable hostility of a global public forum.
Yet, the loss of his eye didn't deter him from his international efforts.
He kept going.
He kept going. In April of 1921, he traveled north to campaign for tighter prohibition laws in Ontario, Canada.
Stepping right back into the fire.
Literally. His reception was incredibly hostile. During an appearance at Toronto's Massey Hall, the audience reaction was so overwhelmingly negative that he was booed into complete silence.
Shut down before he could even start.
But the situation escalated from hostile to genuinely life-threatening when his tour took him to Windsor.
Windsor's geographic and economic position is crucial to understand here.
Why is that?
Located directly across the river from Detroit, Windsor was the primary artery for the illicit liquor trade flowing into the United States. The local economy was heavily dependent on rum runners, the syndicates smuggling alcohol across the border.
Which means Johnson was walking into the epicenter of the industry he spent his life trying to destroy.
Exactly.
The crowd at the Windsor rally recognized the direct economic threat he represented. The hostility was so intense and the threat of violence so immediate that Johnson couldn't even finish his agenda.
He had to flee.
The situation deteriorated to the point where a large detail of police officers had to form a protective perimeter around him. They physically escorted him out of the area and across the border back into Detroit, simply to ensure he wasn't killed by the crowd.
The contrast is striking.
From predator to prey.
Yes. In Oklahoma, he was the lawman initiating the raids and dictating the terms of engagement. In Windsor, he was the target, requiring a heavily armed police escort just to survive a public appearance.
It's a drastic shift.
The intensity of the pushback in Canada illustrates how deeply intertwined the illicit alcohol trade had become with regional economies. To the rum runners of Windsor, Johnson wasn't a political opponent. He was an existential threat to their financial survival.
He spent decades operating in the center of a constant high-stakes conflict, utilizing every tool from stealth and media manipulation to synchronize federal raids.
A lifetime of warfare, really.
But every campaign eventually concludes. In 1927, his first wife, Lily, passed away.
A sad turn.
The following year, in 1928, he married Mae B. Stanley. Finally, in 1930, after a lifetime of undercover stings, thousands of convictions, and surviving bounties and riots, Pussyfoot Johnson stepped away and retired from public life.
He finally rested.
He retreated from the international spotlight and returned to his roots, moving back to his family farm in Shenango County, New York.
Back to where he started, almost.
Yeah. He lived out his remaining years quietly, far removed from the high-stakes espionage and mob violence that defined his career, until his death on February 2, 1945, at the age of 82.
An incredible arc.
So what does this all mean? Why does the life of an early 20th century lawman matter to you today?
It's highly relevant.
Because Johnson's methods provide the architectural blueprints for modern media manipulation. He wasn't just enforcing laws with a badge and a gun. He recognized the immense power of the narrative.
And he wielded it expertly.
He actively leaked correspondence. He weaponized false personas to extract intelligence from his adversaries. He understood that targeted embarrassment could dismantle a political movement just as thoroughly as a legal injunction.
Sometimes even more effectively.
Right. These strategic principles, controlling the flow of information, adopting digital disguises, and leveraging public exposure, are the exact mechanics driving today's information age.
This raises an important question for you to consider. If William E. Pussyfoot Johnson was successfully utilizing false identities to catfish his opponents and leveraging their private communications to publicly humiliate them over a century ago, how much has the playbook of political sabotage actually changed? The technology has certainly evolved, but the underlying psychological tactics remain identical. Imagine what a tactician with the panther tread could accomplish or dismantle armed with an anonymous internet connection and a global digital platform today.